On today's show, we take a look at yet another potential backup center for the Sixers. What would it take to sign this guy? And most importantly, is this our best option? Let's talk about it.
Perfect.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Philly Take with RB. Like always, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoy this content. Help us spread it around to more viewers. Subscribe to the show and be sure to ring the bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. We'll be having a ton of videos, live streams, all that stuff as we lead up to the season. And hey, another day closer to training camp. We are a few weeks away. I am so thrilled. I cannot wait. I think it's going to be a very fun season, and I can't wait to break it all down. But we are back yet again talking about the depth of this team. We know that the backup center is kind of a gray area right now, right? We have questions. Is it going to be the youth? Will Daryl Morey finally force Doc Rivers to go with some of the young guys, or will we go out and sign a potential vet? I think both have their advantages, and there are definitely some options out there, and we will talk about another one today. We've been breaking down a few in the past, week or two, so be sure to check those pieces of content out. But one guy that people keep throwing at me, whether it's YouTube comments, Twitter, whatever, one guy people keep throwing at me is DeMarcus Cousins. Sign Boogie, sign Boogie, sign Boogie. Well, let's look at this article that was actually put out not too long ago by Sports Illustrated. Shout out to Justin Grasso. He put out this article. He covers the Sixers. He said the Sixers considered as the best landing spot for DeMarcus Cousins. Now, we know the career trajectory of DeMarcus Cousins has been very interesting, right? Like, he was a guy who was a former first-round pick. He was all-world, right? He was an all-world talent. He was dominant. He was at, one point, one of the best in the game, maybe the best. Like, he was such a dominant force. And unfortunately, injuries took their route on him. 1, 2, 3, they add up. But now, similar to some of the other centers we've had in previous years, DeMarcus Cousins is just fine, trying to find his line, right? His role, and just continue his career. It's definitely been an interesting one for him. I feel bad for him for certain reasons, which we will talk about. But Boogie Cousins last year spent time with the Milwaukee Bucks, with the Denver Nuggets, and he played up to par for what he was expected to do. He's obviously not the same guy as he used to be, but he can still ball a little bit, man, and he obviously brings that toughness. So it would be an interesting fit here in Philadelphia. Obviously, last year, he was jawing with us, man. He always brings that energy. That's one thing about Boogie Cousins. You will never lack that. But in this article, he essentially just talked about DeMarcus Cousins finding yet a new home. For some reason, the Denver Nuggets signed DeAndre Jordan. I don't even think they went back and looked at DeMarcus Cousins, which means, they're moving on. And, he'll probably find a new home for a minimum contract. And, hey, this is one of the guys out there that maybe you take a chance on. He just talks about his career. Obviously, he was a dominant force with the Sacramento Kings, didn't really get along, with that organization, ended up getting traded to the Pelicans, and that's when he tore his Achilles. And ever since then, right, Golden State, Milwaukee, Houston, all these teams, he just has never really been able to find a suitable home, but that's okay. And this is where I get to my first point, man. DeMarcus Cousins seems just like the type of player that the Sixers would go out and target. You look at the last couple years, right? You want to find a suitable backup vet, for Joel Embiid, right? You look at Dwight Howard. You look at the Andre Drummonds of the world. This is exactly the type of player, a guy who was once very dominant in this game, who is now a role player, but has that experience, has been with different locker rooms, and knows how to be a leader off that second unit. This seems just like the type of guy the Sixers would try to go out and target, and he still is available, which does say something about his play. But, the same thing was said about the other guys when we brought them in, and look at what they were able to do. I continually talk about how the backup center doesn't really need to do too much here in Philadelphia. You're backing up Joel Embiid. It's not like you're asked, to put on a show every night, right? You need to come in and handle yourself for 8 to 10 minutes. And I think Boogie would be able to do that here. Justin says that Cousins was viewed as a possible pickup by the Sixers a couple years ago, but then he ended up signing with the LA Clippers. That was another team he was with. Then he was waived by Milwaukee last year, picked up by Denver, and I thought he did a decent job backing up Nikola Jokic. Here's a quote. from Justin Grasso. He says, like Hassan Whiteside, DeMarcus Cousins may have to take a small role and a veteran minimum to stay in the league, but he showed a willingness to do both in this past year. Cousins could provide a similar stabilizing effect as the backup to Jokic's chief rival, Joel Embiid. And look, man, we just talked about Hassan Whiteside not too long ago. I think the difference that you get between Hassan Whiteside and DeMarcus Cousins, Whiteside might be able to move a little bit more. He might still have more left in the tank, but DeMarcus Cousins has this, man. He's going to bring that dog every single night. There's no question that he will be there mentally and he will show up. Hopefully he's able to sustain his play. But yeah, man, what we're looking for in a backup center, we're looking for a guy to give us 8-10 points a game, give us 5 to 7 rebounds, right? Just hold your own for a couple minutes, but you have to be able to move. And one of the biggest question marks, especially when it comes to a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, is you need to stay healthy. And Cousins has, sustained a lot of bad injuries, and that's definitely a concern. That's definitely something you think about. You don't want your guy to go down. Now, what I would look at for the Sixers is bringing in Cousins and, also playing Charles Bassey, right? We don't want to stint the development of our young guys. Charles Bassey didn't show a lot in Summer League. Obviously, he still has room to grow and develop, but you got to give him that role, right? You got to let him get those minutes under his feet. Paul Reed played in the playoffs. You need to continue to develop him. So even if you bring in DeMarcus Cousins, you still need to have a, earn it by basis type of rotation, right? If Cousins is playing well, you got to give him, more minutes. If Bassey's there, you can't just put him to the side. And we know Doc Rivers has done that before. DeMarcus Cousins last year, he averaged 8.9 points per game. He averaged 5.5 rebounds per game. That's literally all we would need off the bench. And again, he would bring that energy. Seeing yet another guy with Joel Embiid like a DeMarcus Cousins, that would be fun, man. Everybody was down on Dwight Howard. Everybody was down on Drummond. Then we saw how it played out. And quite honestly, if you want me to be very honest, the Sixers did miss out on an opportunity to bring Andre Drummond back. I think he signed for like $3 million per year with the Chicago Bulls. I thought he was going to end up getting a starter salary. He's going to be a backup in Chicago. And the Sixers really could have brought him back, and everybody loved him here in this city. But now we need to move on. And obviously you want to see that development in those young guys. But hey, I would not be mad at bringing in a guy with some experience, especially given the fact this Sixers team is trying to go win a championship, right? We're trying to win now. And it would never help, or it would never hurt to have a guy like Boogie in this locker room. So it's very interesting. And honestly, I feel bad for DeMarcus Cousins. Like I mentioned earlier, this was a guy who was supposed to get a huge contract, right? He left Sacramento, as we can see here in this article from Fadeaway World. This was written a while ago, but, Cousins with the Kings had behavioral, conflicts, and he had some issues with the organization, the coach, George Karl. And in 2017, he was ready to sign a $209 million extension, but they decided to end up trading him. He never ended up signing the contract. He got hurt with the Pelicans, and ever since then, he's lost out on that money. And I feel bad for him. I really do feel bad because he was one of the best in the game. And not only do you lose out on the money, now you're struggling to get through, man. You're struggling to get through. And it says after that moment, Cousins had lost nearly $200 million, making just $12.5 million in the last 4 seasons. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. So he's definitely hungry. He's trying to continue his career. And sometimes you just have to fit the role. And what better way to do that than playing behind a guy like Joel Embiid? I think that would be great. Here's one play from Cousins this past year that I pulled up. I really like, what he did on this play. And if he could do this with the Sixers, man, obviously he's getting older, but look at this play, man. I mean, he's in the post. He had like 31 points this game. Look at that drop step. Goes right up, quick to the basket. That's one thing about Cousins. He definitely has slowed down a lot with the injuries over time, but he still shows flashes in the pan where it's like, oh, wow, like that's a little jolt of that old Boogie Cousins, that post-dominant player that everybody loved, man. That was must-see TV. And, if he could, pull some tricks out of the bag like that, man, I would love him here. Overall, I think the majority of people would say this is a good idea. I think the majority of people would say this is a good idea just because this guy right here, it's just uncertain. I think Charles Bassey is going to be a good rotational piece. I think he can develop. As you can see, here he is in the offseason getting stronger. He's trying to get better. He's working on his game. This is that offseason now going into year 3 where it's like, okay, Bassey, you got to take that step, right? What do I always say? Seize the opportunity. There's minutes there to be had. I want to see it from everybody on the bench. But now, you know, the Sixers are really looking for a backup center, right? Daryl Morey saying, I drafted these guys. I want them to go out there and develop. This is all you, Bassey. If you want it, go take it. I like Paul Reed a lot. I just don't think he's big enough to play the backup five consistently. And obviously, you'll have PJ Tucker backing up, at some points during this season as a small ball five, but that's not sustainable over time, especially in playoff basketball. So whoever wants it needs to take it. And I think it would be good just to try to create a little bit of competition in here as we go forward. You know, Bassey, again, a little bit of an underwhelming summer league. He had, 5.8 points per game, 5.5 rebounds or 5.3 rebounds per game. But he did average almost 2 blocks. That defensive tenacity is there. And it's definitely something you want to see continue, right? But he needs more time. He needs more minutes under his belt. And we need to see that consistent growth and development. So we will see what happens, man. I think it would be very interesting. We talked about Hassan Whiteside, Boogie Cousins. We talked about some of these other guys. There's only a few left on the market. But if Boogie is out there and he is willing to sign for a vet's minimum, I think you do it. I think you do it all day. You bring him in, see how he looks in camp, and then you can decide which way to go from there. But those are just my thoughts. I want to hear from you down below in the comments section. What do you think about Boogie Cousins? Would you give him a shot on this Sixer squad? Give me all your thoughts. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And like always, I will catch you on the next one. Peace.
Perfect.